Somewhere in America right now, a man is starting a tractor his grandfather bought in 1958. It weighs over 300 pounds. It has no plastic parts, and it has never needed a major repair. The Gravely walk-behind tractor was not designed to last a decade. It was designed to last forever. Original Model L tractors from the 1930s still run in daily use across the United States today. At its peak in the 1950s and the 1960s, Gravely sold a full year's production in just 90 days. Dealers could not keep them in stock, and farmers put deposits down months in advance to get on the waiting list. The man who built this machine started with a motorcycle engine, a push plow, and a single tractor wheel in his kitchen in West Virginia in 1911. Most Americans have never heard his name. Benjamin Franklin Gravely was born in 1876 in South Charleston, West Virginia, into a household where resourcefulness was a necessity. By his 20s, he was running a photography studio in Charleston. But when business slowed, he found work as a machinist in the bustling railway shops nearby. Those years spent repairing engines and shaping metal laid the foundation for what would become a lifelong pursuit. In 1911, inside the cramped kitchen of a rented house, Gravely set out to solve a problem that weighed on every small farmer: how to bring the power of a machine to the garden without the cost or bulk of a full-size tractor. He began with what he could find: a spent Indian motorcycle engine, a hand-pushed plow, and a vision for a tool that could do the work of a team of horses. Over the next 5 years, he refined his invention in the basement, adjusting gear trains, experimenting with frame geometry, and testing an attachment system that would let one machine handle a dozen jobs. On December 5, 1916, Gravely received U.S. patent number 1,020,862 for his Gravely motor plow, a machine that relied on all-metal gears and a belt-free drive, choices that would become his signature. Early newspaper accounts describe him loading several prototypes into a Ford Model T and driving to Florida, where he demonstrated the plow in citrus groves and convinced skeptical farmers that a single engine could replace a team. Each sale was won by hand, one demonstration at a time. These early efforts were not just about selling a machine, they were about proving that careful engineering and personal grit could create something that would outlast its maker. On February 3, 1922, Benjamin Gravely and his partners filed incorporation papers for the Gravely Motor Plow and Cultivator Company, securing $200,000 in capital and setting up shop in Dunbar, West Virginia. Inside the modest brick factory, production followed an unusual rhythm. Each tractor was assembled start to finish by a single craftsman. The company's production ledger from 1925 records a steady pace: one completed machine per worker per day. Every frame, gear, and bolt was handled by skilled hands, with each assembler responsible for fitting the gear train, mounting the engine, and testing the finished tractor before it left the bench. The early Model D, released at a list price of $150, set the pattern: thick-walled cast iron, a 5-horsepower engine, and an all-gear drive that eliminated belts entirely. The absence of belts was not just a technical choice, but a statement. Steel gears, hardened and overbuilt, would stand up to Appalachian rocks and decades of use. Service manuals from the period describe the convertible system, a standardized mounting plate that let a single tractor switch between mowing, plowing, and tilling in minutes. This modular approach, combined with the all-metal drivetrain, meant that even as the factory scaled up, durability was never sacrificed for speed. When the Model L appeared in 1928, the core philosophy remained. Now weighing 350 pounds and rated at 5 horsepower, the Model L refined the gear set for smoother operation and added adjustable wheel spacing. Its convertible interface made it the most adaptable machine in its class. The legacy of these Dunbar-built tractors is written in the ledgers and the machines themselves, products of anonymous craftsmen, each one built to outlast trends, owners, and even the company that made them. During World War II, the U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps placed an order for 7,500 Gravely Model L tractors. These machines, fitted with reinforced frames and military-grade oil filters, were shipped to overseas bases and used for everything from hauling artillery to keeping supply depots running. Army field logs from 1943 describe Model Ls operating under punishing conditions, with crews relying on their all-gear drives for reliability in mud and snow. In 1945, the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration ordered more than 1,000 units for post-war agricultural recovery in Europe. Shipments left the Port of New York bound for Poland, Italy, and the Netherlands, where the tractors helped restart farming in devastated regions. The reputation forged in war translated directly into peacetime demand. By the early 1950s, Gravely's annual production capacity reached 30,000 units. Yet the company's own 1955 sales report shows that a full year's output could sell out in just 90 days. Dealers from Ohio to Florida placed deposits months in advance, and waiting lists stretched to 6 months or more. Local demonstration days, often called mow-ins, became community events as shipments arrived and entire towns gathered to watch the new tractors unloaded. The trust shown by institutional buyers, dealers, and ordinary farmers alike cemented Gravely's reputation for overbuilt reliability at a national scale, setting the stage for what came next. In 1960, the Gravely Company was sold to Studebaker Packard for $12.5 million, a figure recorded in the annual filings of the SEC. The new board in South Bend saw a chance to expand into the small tractor market. But their first move was costly. A $2.3 million relocation plan that uprooted the entire Dunbar, West Virginia operation and shifted production to Clemens, North Carolina. The transfer was not just a matter of moving machinery. Out of the skilled Dunbar workforce, around 250 craftsmen chose not to follow the company south. Many found steadier, better-paid work at General Electric's Huntington plant, where the hourly wage was $3.45, compared with Gravely's $2.65, nearly a third more. Payroll records and internal memos from the period show that this wage gap left the new plant with a roster of inexperienced hires. The consequences appeared quickly. Quality audits from the first years in North Carolina documented a rise in warranty claims, from 12 per 1,000 units before the move to 15 per 1,000 afterward, a jump of 23%. Gear teeth wore faster. Engine mounting bolts loosened under strain. The loss of seasoned hands had a measurable effect. And the machines that once carried the reputation of Dunbar's careful assembly now arrived with defects that would have been unthinkable a decade before. By the time Studebaker merged Gravely into its Clark manufacturing division in 1969, the break between old-world craftsmanship and modern corporate management was complete. In 1966, Gravely's internal quality review told a story that numbers could no longer hide. Warranty claims, which had averaged 12 per 1,000 units before the move to North Carolina, rose to 15 per 1,000 units after the first full year, a 23% increase that could be traced directly to the loss of skilled labor. Dealer repair logs from this period document a sharp rise in two categories: premature gear tooth wear and mounting bolts shearing under routine use. Service technicians reported that gear sets, once known for running 20 years without major failure, were now showing pitting and uneven wear within months. Mounting bolts, previously torqued by experienced hands in Dunbar, began to loosen and break, leading to field failures that frustrated longtime customers. Internal auditors flagged these issues in a series of memos, noting that the defect rate for gear assemblies had doubled since the relocation, and that repairs under warranty were costing the company more than ever before. The numbers left little room for debate. Gravely's reputation for indestructibility was no longer supported by the machines leaving the line. Ariens Company purchased Gravely in 1982, bringing the storied walk-behind tractor line under new ownership and a new philosophy. Ariens engineers introduced automated stamping and welding at the St. Louis plant, increasing production capacity to 45,000 units by 1990. This modernization, though efficient, came with trade-offs. Frame thickness was reduced by 15%, and the hallmark overbuilt construction that had defined Gravely for decades began to fade. Plastic gear housings replaced some of the original all-metal components, a decision driven by cost and changing market demands. As the 1990s progressed, the market for walk-behind tractors contracted further. Competitors focused on four-wheel riding mowers and zero-turn designs, leaving the two-wheel Gravely behind. In 2000, Ariens announced the phase-out of the walk-behind line, citing shifting customer preferences and tightening emissions regulations. The last Model L-type unit left the assembly line in 2004, stamped with serial number 250,000. With that final machine, nearly 9 decades of continuous production ended. Not with fanfare, but with a quiet close to one of the most enduring chapters in American machinery. Across the country, Gravely walk-behinds built before 1960 still start each morning, proof that Benjamin Franklin Gravely's uncompromising vision endures. In an era of disposable machines, these tractors remain family heirlooms, working decades beyond their makers. Longevity, once engineered, becomes its own quiet legacy. Share your Gravely story below.